These young boys in these little isolated towns who've got their social issues of, especially sniffing petrol and glue, alcohol. When they pass out on the streets or on park benches, people from the mountain comes down with four-wheel drive, buses and utes. They come up into the mountains, they're up there for 3 months, a drying out period. Now in this day and age, what is it? Kidnapping, abduction. The family don't say nothing about it because they know that these people from the mountains have taken them. They're problem boys when they in the communities, but I tell you what, 3 months up there, when they get initiated and circumcised, some of them have infections. The medical people are there on hand when they come back down. But I tell you what, from what she told me, they are role model teenage boys when they come back down. They have a lot of respect for their mums and dads, grandparents, but most importantly themselves. Yes.
You mentioned a lot of people were leading this way of life and going elsewhere to get higher education, coming back and helping people. How do they afford it?
Sorry?
How do they afford to leave and get higher education? I know that's very expensive.
Well, with subsidies throughout the government, and that, yes. Me, I had to pay the damn thing back since I started at Jabberkai. Yes.
For people that went to Jabberkai today, this little brochure doesn't have, it's just got a map, there's a little bit of information about Jabberkai, so I'll leave them here if you'd like to take one of those. I think Ernie's got a big night on tonight at Jabberkai. He's got to go back, he's got a big all set up tonight. So
They're doing a dance at 5 to 10 tonight, so I'll probably take a pillow when I go back.
Get down,
Thanks, look, I certainly enjoyed your company tonight as well, and hopefully you enjoyed it all. Enjoy the next stage of your journey, have a nice meal tonight, but most importantly, have a safe trip back home. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Welcome. American reporter Joe Carroll has been through something tragic, terrifying, and actually quite common. Like countless other people who live in or visit Iraq, she was kidnapped. What makes her special is that she had the closest encounter with kidnappers of any American who survived. She was driven to despair and exhaustion by her, but also astounded at how informal and improvised it turned out to be. Carroll was taken in a daylight attack in January, during which the kidnappers shot and killed her on purpose, owing to every violence that day, the constant fear she felt in the days that followed, may be what he might have spent. But the rest of her account
from deep space, and as the windows progress increasingly from volcanic material. At the bottom of the seventh window, there is, for the first time, streamers emerging that may form life, and the deep blue of the ocean, but in between, a band of red green, which is volcanic activity forming the land of the earth. At the top of the eighth window, the stars have been the dominant theme of the windows until this point, begin to become obscured. The clouds in the sky become more obvious. 3 meteors are burning into the atmosphere, indicating for the first time that there is an atmosphere forming on Earth capable of sustaining life. Underneath that is a volcanic cinder in the act of forming Earth, at the top of which are blowing sulphurous, noxious fumes. And in the cinder cone itself, in the lava flows down its flanks, are weird colours, greens and purples, indicating that at this stage the Earth is not ready to have a thing. A little bit below the volcanic cinder is a lava ridge over a lava flow, indicative of the sort of formations that are obvious under our lava tubes. And for the first time in the windows, we have an indication that the geography and the purpose of the window is going to be vast.
God said, "Let the waters teem with living creatures," and so it was. God created great sea serpents and every kind of living creature with which the waters teem. God saw that it was good. God blessed them, saying, "Be fruitful, multiply, and fill the waters of the sea." Genesis 1:21-23.
the bottom of the window and beneath the lava flow is obviously the deep waters of the ocean. On the left-hand lower side, there is a repulsive, ugly, black line shape, perhaps looking like a stonefish, which is a chaos of streamers and ribbons. Springing from the right-hand side of that big black shape is a vibrant swirl of colours in the form of a double helix, deliberately put in the windows as the formation of genetic material. In the very, very centre of that lower part of the window, there is a white spot, which is in fact a highly refractive prism. That is the point at which life was created. That is the point at which everything that was dull and inanimate beforehand suddenly bursts into life. To continue the theme of plenitude already established in the stars and the cathedral, the stars disappear at the top of window 8 and reappear as living things springing from the point of creation of life in the ocean as radiolarians and diatoms, wonderful little microscopic things. Windows 2, 3 and 4 start off with very large vertical shapes dominating the composition. They're swept down by the bottom of window 6 in a huge diagonal which sweeps back up again into window 8. And windows 9, 10, 11 and 12 then resolve themselves into 3 horizontal bands. At the top is the sky, in the middle is the land, and at the bottom is the sea. Reading down window 9 from the top, there are no stars, there are only clouds, which confirms that for the first time there is an earthly atmosphere. In the sky, caused by a great volcanic outburst, is deep cloud and sulphurous fumes. Rivers of fire flow down the side of the mountain and across in a diagonal under the lava bridge towards the front of the cathedral. In the background, in grey volcanic shape, are 2 recognisable diocesan mountains, Bartle Frere and Mount Tyson. Below the lava flow, green sulphurous, choking atmosphere is being formed, whereas lower down in the water, the radiolarians and the small creatures starting in window 8 are becoming more emphatic and more determined until at the bottom of the window, the coral reef, the Great Barrier Reef, begins its formation. With sponges, corals, the earliest life forms, anemones, chitons, and segmented worms. Reading down window 10, the heavens become more earthly, or perhaps that should be unearthly in the sense that they are full of volcanic fumes and dire tropical thunderstorms. But where the lightning strikes stop, 2 very recognisable mountain shapes evolve, the Chiligo lime bluffs and Mount Mulligan. Flowing between is a rainbow serpent. The middle section of window 10 is deliberately intended to be disorderly, to be chaotic, and many things are happening simultaneously. Whereas down in the sea, life becomes more confirmed and more purposive. At the bottom of that window, there is a giant clam. A little to the right of that, a cryptid octopus, the first crustaceans in a spotted crab, and on the right.
And the husband wished for a woman 30 years younger. So the fairy waved a wand and turned him into 92. And I know that wouldn't be you, David.
Oh, that sounds like a female. I still do,
Payback. 10.5, red-haired with blue eyes, called Mildred. It's Mildred up the back. I told her this the other day. And my father was a lieutenant commander who went over to the UK on loan to the Royal Navy. And he met my mother and just fell instantly in love. and asked her to come and see his depth charges. I believe we showed her the Aztec cabinet as well, which his depth charges, you know, that's instead of it, in those days that was in, you know, the same as your etchings, I gather. Anyway, it was a happy, very happy marriage for them. My brother and I were both born in England. We came to Australia via the west, through Africa, and when we were coming through Africa, Mummy met up with her brother who had been captured in North Africa by the Italians and had been a prisoner of war. He was 6'5" and weighed 7 stone when he came out of the prisoner of war camp. So we visited them, and then we came in through Perth. The captain got drunk and hit a reef. We were on what they called a tramp steamer. And he hit a reef and I broke my thigh. So with my mother who'd conceived crossing the equator, she said that the contraceptives had melted apparently. She conceived, so she had me and my brother, and she was pregnant and everything they owned on the ship, and they had to leave me in hospital with my leg in traction and continue on to Sydney. And I flew 6 weeks later across Australia, the first child ever to fly in the company across Australia, and I hit the front page of the newspapers, the one and only time. But I think that's where I got my love of flying. So I grew up in Sydney. I went to a Methodist ladies' college. They changed it to school for girls after we left. They decided because we were incorrigible, couldn't make us into ladies. And grew up on the North Shore in Sydney. Very happy, sort of sheltered, I suppose, childhood. Always loved flying, and at 20 studies. That time Qantas was only an international airline. And I was fortunate. They did about 5 interviews in those days. One girl, and they were so strict. You had to have your hair an inch above your collar, and you had to wear a panty girdle to make sure no flesh was seen to wobble and entice men in an unseemly manner. And they used to make you stretch into the luggage racks to make sure you couldn't see the top of your stockings, you know. So there's one hostess, only a hostess, and then 5 tech crew and 5 cabin crew. You were the only one on the flights. So I only flew for 18 months, and then once you got married, you had to leave. So I married and had 2 children. And now 36, my son with his 2 boys in Tasmania, and my daughter who's 34 on the 9th of September. Got a couple of other birthdays around that time, little Virgos. And she has 2 girls and lives in Sydney. I worked, as I mentioned to you earlier, from when I was first separated, I went to work with a company in Sydney called Captain Cook Cruises that'll be taking you out on your Sydney cruise. And I don't only say to you to do it because I worked for the company. I have a very strong and deep loyalty with them and for them, but because I believe Sydney is such a beautiful harbour, and it is a fantastic way to see the city of Sydney, which was built around the harbour. But I worked there and started off, I went for a job as a galley girl and became a commentator, and then I ended up buying all the uniforms and doing the design and getting the uniforms done, employing and training the commentators and doing the international sales and marketing. And I worked through the company over 18 years, from one boat to